When it comes to life in medieval times, there's a lot about it that seems pretty appealing. Sure, you'd be sharing a home with rats, but at least you'd get to wear awesomely fluffy clothing and eat delicious foods. There were plenty of things that would kill you back then that just don't exist anymore. Let's find out what they are. Imagine it's a normal day in the village, and you decide to head over to the marketplace. You're hoping to pick up some fresh ingredients to cook a nice meal at home. You're considering working in the coal mine, but as soon as you descend 1,000 feet under the earth, you're inhaling respirable crystalline silica dust. The fact that it still exists today doesn't mean it's not deadly, and people flocked to cities to work there. This led to extreme overcrowding and dirty living conditions. You survived the plague, walking around at night, working in the mines, and the air in London, but how are you going to make it out alive after a simple stroll in the park? Well, it depends on whether or not you're able to steer clear of horse dung. Throughout history, horses were used for labor. They helped humans transport goods, plow fields, and serve in the military, but unfortunately, they didn't always get along with us. On average, a horse kicks a person between 400 and 600 times in its lifetime, causing a whopping 200 deaths per year, even though this happened in more rural areas. You can bet that there were still a few kick-related fatalities in urban settings, but that wasn't the only way you could die by horse. See, back in the 1700s, riding horses was a fashionable pastime. It was usually reserved for the wealthy who were too scared to let their servants ride on horseback. If you fell off and landed wrong, you could crack your skull right open. The phrase "he took a spill" originated during this time period. It's derived from the Scottish word spill, meaning to dash violently to the ground. Other than the obvious danger of riding a horse, there were other ways to perish in this era. Taxis hadn't been invented yet, so your main mode of transportation was walking. And since there were no traffic lights or signs, you had to be careful not to step in front of a carriage. Otherwise, you might end up getting rolled over. To make matters worse, vehicles filled the streets, spewing soot and smoke. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out more just like it. With that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. In 1952, London experienced one of the worst air pollution events in history. A high-pressure system trapped smoke over the city for days. The air was thick with a mixture of smoke and fog, reducing visibility to just a few feet. Schools and businesses were shut down, and more than 4,000 Londoners ended up dying due to breathing in the polluted air. The Great Smog of London was a disaster, but it didn't change much. For decades, air pollution was just part of everyday life. This is why millions of people in industrialized cities didn't make it past the age of 50. After all, it claims 1.6 million lives annually. While TB can affect anyone, it's especially harmful to those who are well off. Since the wealthy spent most of their time indoors, they were more susceptible to contracting the airborne disease. This group of people tended to have weaker immune systems due to poor diets consisting of processed ingredients and little exercise. On top of that, they frequently traveled via ships and trains, allowing the bacteria to spread quickly. When someone important came down with the disease, everyone around them tried to avoid catching it. They sent the person away to a sanatorium, which wasn't necessarily the best idea. TB was rampant in these facilities, so it was almost inevitable that whoever entered them would contract the disease and die. Your lungs take in this silica, which causes inflammation and scar tissue, also known as As you continue working in the mines, the scar tissue builds up, and you start to experience symptoms such as a fever, fatigue, and shortness of breath. However, it's not until 15 years later that you're diagnosed with lung cancer. Now, whether you developed this disease from your job, or because you were constantly exposed to outdoor pollutants, is entirely clear. But either way, you're not going to survive the year. Something else to consider is that mining accidents were no joke. Explosions, cave-ins, being trapped, it was a constant worry. But you'll have to make haste because as soon as you enter the market, you're surrounded by people coming from all directions. And this close proximity is enough for you to catch a deadly disease that will wipe out half of Europe in the next 5 years. Well, maybe not yet, but you never know. Back in the Middle Ages, there were no systems in place to keep people healthy, nor were there many ways to treat illnesses. If a doctor did happen to be around, they would likely just make things worse by attempting bloodletting or giving you a laxative for everything. This, of course, didn't do much to help people get rid of diseases like the bubonic plague, which arrived via rats. Symptoms included a fever, chills, headaches, nausea, and but as things progressed, you'd start to notice swollen lymph nodes, ache. As mentioned before, this was an extremely painful way to go out, and the chances of you surviving were slim to none. Plus, If you wanted to go out in town, you'd probably die doing so anyway. London, especially, is considered one of the most dangerous cities in history. Overcrowding was a serious issue. People had little access to basic resources, and the streets were patrolled by criminals. The police force wasn't created until 1829. So prior to that year, you really had to watch your back if you went outside after dark. If you weren't mugged, you could easily be attacked by a stray dog. And since dog bites are apparently not rare in England, this might have been a real risk. Maybe it's better to just stay inside where you're safe. Well, maybe not. After all, you're probably living in a home built from flammable materials with an open flame nearby. Fires were a common occurrence in the 1800s, and escaping them was often impossible. The bad news is that even if you managed to stay alive during your typical day in the Middle Ages, you wouldn't last very long at all. No. 6. Let the plague begin. Number 5. Going outside at night. Fast forward from the Dark Ages to the Victorian era, and things do unseem like they've gotten much better. Number 4. Working in the mines. Let's say you live in the early 1800s, and you're in desperate need of money. 3. Disease of the upper class. Now let's switch gears and talk about tuberculosis, which killed around 1/3 of the population of Europe in the 1800s. 2. Suffocating in smog. During the Industrial Revolution, factories started popping up everywhere. 1. A hit from behind. So you've made it this far. Do you think you could survive a day in medieval times? Let us know your thoughts.